You heard correctly. It's the return of the motion picture men, temporarily filling in here on the Bootu Boys podcast. I am Spencer Hendricks. I am hosting a delightful pick that I've made called Miami Connection from 1987. I've seen this movie several times. The guys with me hosting have seen it with me several times.
Tough guys with you.
Yeah, you guys are definitely in that category of tough guys. That's Brian Vaughn. Brian, tell me how much you love Miami Connection.
I love it dearly with my whole heart.
Van Lee, you're the other tough guy here. What do you think about Miami Connection?
I love it so much that I killed my parents so I could be an orphan and fit in.
Although, well, more to come on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the traits of the characters we're about to cover is they are all orphans, or kind of, as we later learn. There are a couple other things besides orphans. They're rock and roll superstars. They're
Right.
college students, most believably of all.
So all of this so far is still within the realm of possibility. College students that are in a band and they're all orphaned.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Okay, they're also
Sure.
all Taekwondo black belts.
Oh.
Well, no,
Well, I mean, but-
I don't think they all are. I think 3 of them are, and they protect the rest.
Early
'Cause
on,
as we'll
it is
see-
claimed that all of them are.
They have the claim, but yeah, the actual training, we can talk about that. Not all of them demonstrate that in the movie that they are black belts. We do see it with a couple of the guys, and then most of them
I'd
don't
like
do
to add
anything.
that they're also all very conscientious restaurant patrons.
Sure.
They
That's
have a great
something else you can put
relationship.
on their resume, and murderers.
Things get a little out of hand. This movie is actually delightfully heartwarming for most of it. And then at the end, we do get a little bit of violence. It does turn into that. It's funny because when the 3 of us did the rewatch recently in preparation for hosting this, I actually commented like, this is such a nice fighting movie. They're just fighting. Nothing bad happens. And was like, well,
Give
that's
it
not
time.
really true at the end. And I had forgotten that at the end of the second episode we cover, because of course we're doing part 1 today and then part 2 next week. By the time we wrap this up next week, it will not be lighthearted at all.
It's one of the
there'll be
great
some murders.
underrated tone changes in cinema history.
And I can tell you the exact timestamp. At 1 hour and 13 minutes into this movie, we get a death which sets off the deaths of many characters.
Yeah, it is wild. And the movie, you said 113, Van? Well, it's like 123, the movie, probably.
Yeah, the last
yeah.
15 minutes. Actually, this kind of reminded me of one of the ones we did last year, Champagne and Bullets. There's a lot more murder throughout that one, but at the very last, 15 minutes of that thing, everyone's dying.
Yeah, it kicks into
It
gear.
was kind of like that, except this one is so much more wholesome and lighthearted overall than any of the other ones that we've done in motion
It has
picture.
far less of a sinister undertone. Its creator is probably a bit more pure of heart, though his hubris does shine through more than I realized watching it in a group setting.
I think that's the real starting point that I want to take talking about Miami Connection here. First of all, let me do my boilerplate, just reading the synopsis that I found online, which is great.
Did you get this out of Roger Ebert's Great Movies book?
This has gone mainstream enough to just have a standard Google description, which reads, multinational martial arts rock band Dragon Sound embark on a wreck rave of crime-crushing justice, clamping down on Florida's narcotic trade.
I don't think
Wait.
that's...
It's not accurate. They're not at any point trying to go after the narcotic angle.
They are
Cocaine
on
isn't a
accident.
narcotic either.
I guess I don't
That's
know.
a stimulant. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a narcotic.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
not
know what classifies
You don't take
it.
cocaine for pain relief. You take it to get fucked up and have a group toot.
And talk a lot at a party with Kirk Cameron. Yeah.
Exactly.
Are we supposed to believe that off screen perhaps some narcotics are being sold and we're supposed to just infer that?
No, I think it's just people didn't know what narcotics were because they're so
Slipped
innocent.
it by me.
So
I didn't know.
innocent and
It's like,
sweet
yeah, sure,
in this
narcotics. Sounds good.
movie.
So that's our Google summary. Let's briefly summarize it in our words. And I want to mention that this is directed by a man named YK Kim and another guy named Richard Park. They actually worked on this together. I didn't know this, but Richard Park apparently talked YK Kim into doing this movie.
Oh.
I guess he saw YK Kim in some kind of interview.
Oh, that wouldn't be the setting I'd think you'd want him from. You'd
Yeah.
say this guy should be in a movie. I'd think it'd be the fighting.
It was likely in his natural language in the interview, so he's much more, I guess you would say, articulate in his normal language, I'm sure. But Richard Park watches him do this interview. He's like, this guy's awesome. I want to do a movie with him. So he gets him to himself. He says, hey, I'm pitching this idea. It wasn't quite Miami Connection. It was supposed to be YK Kim and some other guy.
It was Toledo Connection.
And they were supposed to play brothers, and it was a different plot, and it turned into this. But YK Kim's like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. Van alluded to this when we introduced the show on the teaser segment of our last episode. YK Kim is just, he's a regular entrepreneur. He's got a bunch of martial arts schools. He is an evangelist for martial arts. He's really big in the Orlando area, the greater Orlando area, where he's kind of made his presence into something of like a religious figure there for martial arts people. And he put together his funds. He got a mortgage out on his business or whatever. He asked fans for donations, raised like $1 million to make this movie happen, having no experience with it at all. And this was the outcome of it. It was an independent project, as you guys can imagine. There were no
actors.
No, it was all his students and people he knew from his personal life. So
these guys all were from whatever his local dojo was that he ran.
Yep. Not a single movie person involved in the making of this.
No, much like last week, and next week, we have a situation where no one involved won their role, so to speak. They just kind of got it.
So real briefly, if someone said, let's watch Miami Connection, what's this movie about? Do your best.
I guess I would just say ninja crime fighting friends take on a cartel-ish and a school of Central Florida.
Yeah, sure. A group of University of Central Florida students form a band and a roving ninja team. It's all for fun and games at first, but then one of them has a brother with a big amount of hair, and that guy fights them. And see, I don't know.
You just trail off once you get to that point.
And then also one of them finds his dad at some point.
And this guy with the restaurant, I keep coming back to that, but that is really tacked on.
There's a few elements that they went too far, maybe. They had their standard action fare. This is from 1987, so some of the stuff we see in this movie, you would actually see in a normal movie.
Sure.
At least the themes of it would be there, and especially the music, which we'll talk about at great length. But there's some relatively formulaic elements of this movie. I say that meaning to compliment it, and like it's not all completely batshit. There's some of it where it's like, oh, they're just going for a kung fu type movie, and there's 80s music, and you've seen this before. And then there's the extra tacked on stuff, several scenes of it, I would say, several tacked on scenes and several full-length songs from the band that elevate it to that territory that we like it for. Because if they just made it a standard martial arts movie, we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
We might have enjoyed it, but holy cow. It's all the extra bonus stuff that made this what it is. And it's definitely a movie that if you're far away from it and you're looking at it, you go, yeah, 80s action movie. And then you get closer and you do the motion picture men treatment and look deep into this thing and you go, what the fuck?
And even just watching it, even the first time, we all picked up on the big thing. And this is, I think, evident in a lot of the truly great bad movies. Too many ideas. They're all shoved in there and they don't belong together, and trying to cram all these ideas in at once without a lot of foresight is just, it's magnificent to behold.
Nobody who was familiar with the film process to tell them, you can't do that.
And probably no one familiar with writing. I mean, these movies often feel edited in a way that kind of baffles, and it's no different here. And it's just so much fun, because you truly don't know what's going to happen next, much like in a really good movie.
And I'll tell you one
like
thing
this one.
about this movie that will always have me coming back to it is there's joy in it. You can see the people making it are having fun. And I don't think that's there in Online 2013.
No, actually, that I think is a unique thing among the three movies we're covering this year. I don't think joy motivated anything that will go on in our third movie either.
No.
No, I was watching an interview with YK Kim, and he talked about what he was
subtitled.
No, I mean, he did his best. They talked about what he was going for in this, and so he does get a little caught up in his own place and the fact that he did build himself into a very successful martial arts figure. I think he's aware of that. Like, he definitely knows in that community he's kind of a legend, but he seems generally kind of well-meaning in all the interviews. And he specifically said when he made this movie, he did it for his love, his personal deep love of martial arts.
And that's cool.
That's the only thing he wanted to do. Like, if it turned out to be a great movie and he hoped it would, that's great. But he was mostly doing this because he just loves martial arts and wanted a chance to talk about it.
That does shine through, because they're like long, unbroken martial arts segments that aren't even fights or relevant to a plot. And this is the sort of thing where you need film people involved.
To say, don't do that.
I get it. Like, you wouldn't put one of us in charge of making a movie about one of our passions, because the same thing might happen. You'd be like, what do I cut here? I love watching this. Oh, look at that guy touch the guy's nose with his foot.
That is, I guess, one of his special tricks, because I saw videos of him doing that to his students, too, where he twists their nose with his foot.
It's pretty cool, honestly.
Monkey feet. My ex-girlfriend Gail used to be able to do that. She had monkey feet.
I could do it.
You've got that where your second toe is way
Yeah.
bigger than the big toe.
My
I don't
second
care for
toe is
that.
also longer than my pinky finger, and my fingers are not short.
He's got weird feet, guys.
I'm like an 8. I just didn't evolve right.
Ladies, gentlemen, if you're out there and you're listening, you got a foot fetish, get in touch with Brian. He'll sell you some feet pics.
I'm one of those things, if you were to photograph me in the wild, you can sell photos to like what's the thing called with Bat Boy?
Oh, Weekly World News.
Yeah, Weekly
I
World
wish that was
News.
still around. It is in web form, but when I was a kid, I used to love buying the magazines at the store and reading through them. Oh, they were so good. Now, real quick, I do want to get this out there. I've made the joke a few times. We're going to make it going forward. So I want to point out that YK Kim is a Korean immigrant. He is from Korea. English is not his native language, and it shows in this movie, and that's okay, but I'm going to make fun of it from time to time because he is unintelligible for half of this movie.
Another thing about YK Kim, and this has nothing to do with where he's from or anything like that either. I think it might have something to do with his life of martial arts, but he looks like shit. He has been beat up a lot. I think that seriously is part of it. This comes from also, I've watched a lot of pro wrestling, and the longer you do this stuff, you get your ears and your eyes and stuff, you just get battered.
Yeah, it
from
looked like
doing
he'd taken a few kicks to the head at some point.
He's
for
permanently bruised.
This would matter way, way less if his role in this movie was not fellow college student.
I looked at his date of birth, and I think he was born in like 1956, so he was only about 30 when this movie was filmed.
He looks older than that.
He looks about 40,
worn.
and he's supposed to be playing, I assume, 20.
I guess, 20, 21 or something.
How old do you have to be to murder?
None of the kids in this movie do look like college students in the slightest bit, but they all look, younger than he does.
And YK Kim is not the only one who really does not acquit himself well to a camera. The band is full of people who just look weird on camera. I really suspect more people than you think would look strange trying to act on camera.
I think this is a
definitely
good
think
example of that. You can't just pick somebody out of a crowd because they'll
You have
look
to
like
know how to
this.
do it.
Yeah, there takes training.
So initially, right after this filming was complete, where YK Kim spent $1 million and pretty much was out of funds, practically bankrupt, this movie opened in just a handful of theaters in the greater Orlando area in 1988. But it did so badly, reception-wise, that it only got about 3 weeks of runtime.
I guess they
in the
weren't able to
theaters.
sell it at Cannes.
So the Orlando Sentinel actually called it the worst film of 1988. They locally were very mean to YK Kim and kind of broke his spirit and hated it.
You mean this didn't win the Palme d'Or?
It didn't win a thing. No, it was not well received and mostly just disappeared from the earth for 25 years or so.
Which is crazy to think about because this thing has a cult following.
Yep.
It is beloved now.
This is another similarity to Champagne and Bullets, which
Yes.
just kind of disappeared and came back after a couple decades.
So there's actually a short, about 22-minute documentary on YouTube that's just freely available. You guys should watch it, where it talks about the story where a guy named Zach Carlson, who was just a programmer at the Alamo Draft House in like 2009, found a 5-reel 35mm print of this film available on eBay for $40.
Wow.
And he didn't know anything about it, but it was $40. So, and he's a film freak. So he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and buy this and see what it's like. So he blind purchased it for that price and then found out it was this. When they finally, he said they had it in storage for like a year at the Draft House. They didn't use it right away. When they finally did give it a chance for a small group that they knew would be receptive to weird movies, they had some kind of theme for it, like Weird Wednesdays or something. They ran just the first scene or just the first part of the movie, and the audience just loved it and demanded to see the whole thing. So immediately it got huge success there to their crowds. And then Carlson gave the film to Draft House Films, and the director, Evan Husney, contacted YK Kim directly to ask about a re-release. But at this point, YK Kim had given up on this movie.
Sure. Yeah.
Decades ago. He thought that this was a joke, and he hung up on this guy several times, kept calling back and asking, no, this is real. I really want to re-release this film. So eventually they started ironing out the deals, and they got that re-release done toward the end of 2012. That was with the Blu-ray
That's what it
copies,
was.
the vinyl records. It's a big re-release, and it looks super cool. The music, I was telling Brian about this on the way here, the music being released on a vinyl album is just awesome.
I really want that.
The crackle of the record player. Oh,
yeah,
it's
and
so
the
cool.
cover looks really neat. I watched in the same thing later on. The Zach Carlson guy has a whole footage of him going around talking to people it was a Vice segment. And he goes to Angelo Giannotti's house, who plays Tom in the film.
The guitarist.
He is the guitarist, the
one who
lead
looks like
vocalist,
Oates
the one, yes,
from Hall & Oates.
The
He
Oates
said his name was
lookalike.
Angelo Giannotti. What else do you need?
Fair enough.
And he was the brains behind all the songs in the movie.
That
And
makes
he,
sense.
He goes and talks to him personally at his studio in like 2016, maybe, when they made this. And he shows the vinyl when they're doing the interview, and it just looks so cool.
That is awesome.
I really wanted it.
You know those Far Cry games? Have you heard of those? I've never played them.
I haven't
What
either.
are those?
It's some
I think it's
action
a
thing.
shooter, but I'm not sure. What I wanted to point out is that Friends is in the Far Cry 3 soundtrack.
I just learned that in prepping for this.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the end song when you finish the game. I think it's Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon or something. People were really into that. I guess already by that point, people were starting to kind of get to know the movie a little
And
bit
this
and the cult
movie-
following.
This movie's definitely in the big bad movie canon now.
Oh, it's certainly in the Pantheon, yeah.
That has expanded, of course, with the last 20 years or so of things resurfacing and just mass availability, I think. But it's fun to see some of our favorites get inducted in a way.
So by this re-release period, since that time period, the reception has been much better toward it and fair, knowing like what it is and what it's going for. So it's received a lot more love in those years, in the past 12 years almost since the re-release. And it does more favorably now. Like you guys mentioned, it does have the cult following and has established itself as what it is. And it's well entrenched as the kind of movie that we love and why we're talking about it today.
I actually found out about this, I believe, through Riff Tracks, which is the MST3K guys. And they, of course, release video on demands where it's their audio played over the movie. And then they also do, actual newer movies. But I know did we all three go watch the live event together? I believe so.
We sure did.
And
I
those
think
are
we'd
so
only
much
seen it
fun.
once when we went to that. Like we saw it one time before then. I mentioned this when we introduced that we were going to be covering it. It was that night we watched like 3 and they were all awesome.
They were
and that
great.
was one of them.
Mhm.
And then we heard that they were doing the Riff Tracks event a couple years later, maybe just the next year. And we just had to see that.
And the thing, too, I think that cements this as one of the elites of the bad movies, the good bad movies, is, for example, there's the Reddit subreddit r/bad movies. This is on the do not talk about list because it gets talked about too much. It's one that
I
you can't make
figured-
posts about.
That's kind of what I mean. Like, and when you have a long history of kind of seeking out bad movies, you get, like with any art form, like if I'm looking up best albums of all time, I wouldn't even Google that because you're just going to see the same Beatles, whatever,
Yeah.
And that's the Miami Connection is now on that list. It
That's
has
great.
reached that status.
I'm really happy for it, especially considering it did seem to hurt YK Kim's feelings when nobody liked it. He was genuinely sad.
Well, it might hurt his feelings to know why it's on these lists.
He seems okay with it from
He
what I
does.
could tell.
Good.
Well, see,
Good.
he was at the Riff Tracks live event.
Yeah,
He was at the
He
studio
was
where they were.
supportive of it when
He
they
loves
did
it.
that.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So he's all about this stuff now.
I think it's nice for him that he did end up getting recognition for it. And people have given it credit like, okay, the movie's really goofy, and yes, I'm laughing at it, but I mean, you can tell the martial arts is well
The
thought
martial
out.
arts are cool.
The music's
songs
fun.
are great.
Yeah. I listen to these songs separate of this movie periodically. They're that good.
In that interview, that was one of the things he mentioned is like, if you want drama, romance, or comedy,
Acting.
you're not going to like this movie. But if you like action and you like music, this is what you watch it
Another
for.
thing too is there's something to be said about the Miami setting and seeing like palm
I
trees
agree.
and and like a jungle
They
type
put
feel.
the setting to work for him in this movie. I didn't feel that with San Francisco in the room so much.
Oh, that's because it was fake.
Yeah, because it's like you see the interior settings and then occasionally they show the Golden Gate Bridge.
Kind of the periphery of this movie is really interesting.
There
And
are
I mean,
a couple scenes that actually were just well shot for a second. It was like, that's kind of cool. I like this.
I mentioned this, right at the beginning, but the tonal shifts are the thing that to me are the real cherry on top. They make it jarring each time you watch it. And that's kind of like the thing that elevates this again from a really fun bad movie to one of the very best. There are just so many factors that go right in that regard.
So real briefly, I just pulled these cast descriptions of the character straight off Wiki. I'll read it directly from there so we can get an idea who we'll be talking about when we cover the film. Of course, we have YK Kim as the main character. He is Mark, Korean rhythm guitarist of Dragon Sound and Taekwondo instructor, and father figure to the other band members.
Also, guitarist.
Yeah.
Well, he's not acting in the Taekwondo. He had to put something in there that he didn't know, and that's the music.
He should have just been their manager or something.
He probably wanted to
Be young.
You know, when you watch the other guys playing those songs on stage, you're not going to write yourself out of those parts.
No,
you want to be
join
up there.
in.
I'll tell you exactly what it's like when we see him on stage when they're playing against the ninja and he's strutting around with his guitar, pretending to flail at it. It's like when we saw Al in Quantum Leap on stage with the Glitter Rock band, pretending to rock out. The only difference is no one could see him because he was a ghost or whatever. Everyone can see YK Kim going to town on that guitar.
No, and there is one other difference, which is the songs in that, like Fate's White Wheel, boring.
True. I don't know about Rock the Redhead.
Well, that's not boring.
A good song.
Then we have Vincent Hirsch as John, Irish-American bass guitarist of Dragon Sound, and Jane's boyfriend. That's the pivotal part there, which kind of gives us a Romeo and Juliet element to our film here.
I believe I referred to him in my notes as the lanky guy.
Yep. He is absurdly lengthy. He looks like about, like 6'7", 6'6", something like that.
Also, everyone in the movie has a distinctly 80s fashion sense, and that they're just putting whatever on together. And I don't know. I like it. It's fun to look at.
And we have William Ergel. By the way, none of these people are something you would look up on IMDb and be like, what kind of career did they have?
Do you think anyone in this had a different role in a different movie?
I
don't
checked
think
a
so.
few and no, so I just gave up. And how could they?
Oh, yeah, William Ergel. He was in the Pelican Brief.
William Ergel's Jeff, leader of a gang of hooligans, which is closely associated with Yoshido's gang of ninjas, and Jane's brother. There's some of the conflict there for some reason.
You should also know going in, hairiest guy you'll have ever seen, and an assortment of cool earrings.
Big hair, big beard. Pretty impressive.
Shark tooth earring.
I will butcher this because it's a Korean name, I believe, and I never get it right, but Seong Jo, or maybe it's Ho, but it's with a J. Seong Jo as Yoshido, leader of a gang of ninjas, which is closely associated with Jeff's gang of hooligans.
Are they supposed to be like sort of the boss of Jeff's ninjas?
Yes, like they're the drug syndicate, whereas Jeff is like the local group that sells.
Yeah, they handle a territory.
Jeff's not nearly as big time as Yoshido,
right?
But they are close. They have a very close relationship.
He looks like he's the understudy in a way,
and I think Yoshido. We'll talk about some of the scenes. Genuinely cares about Jeff.
He loves him.
I'm going to tell you right now, Yoshido's a good dude. He's a nice guy. This whole fucking movie, they paint him out to be the big bad, but everything he does is cool.
And you know what? I like the little conservatory he has set up.
It's beautiful.
Oh, that thing is
For his
gorgeous.
ninjas.
I would like to go there for a vacation.
I can't wait to talk about that. Okay, I'll shut up about it now, though.
Just a couple more people here, and then we're ready to get started. So then there's Kathy Collier as Jane, guest vocalist of Dragon Sound, John's girlfriend and Jeff's sister. She has more than a guest vocalist part in Against the Ninja. She is the main force in that song. Other songs, she just kind of sits there. And then we have Joseph Diamond as Jack. Joseph Diamond, by the way, was the screenwriter for this movie. The story was YK Kim and Richard Park, but they had this guy, this Joseph Diamond, who was a student of YK Kim's, write the screenplay.
So he wrote the things like later when he tries to tell everyone they should go on a world tour.
I'm thinking, yes, he did. He put those words in his own mouth.
Okay, so this is the Israeli guy.
Yes.
As we come to find out. Okay.
Jack, Israeli-American drummer of Dragon Sound. And then lastly, we have, I shouldn't say lastly, he's fantastic, Maurice Smith as Jim, Korean/African-American keyboardist of Dragon Sound.
And keeper of a secret.
I have read that Jim is considered the emotional center of Dragon Sound.
Oh, he
What do you
has
guys
to
think
be.
about that?
He's got a real Brian Vaughn voice, too.
He does. And he is mostly the emotional center, but the restaurateur that we meet, I think he takes up like 10% of that space.
Yeah, I like that guy.
There's something about him that says like he's like maybe the center of this area of Miami. Everyone respects him, even YK Kim. And that's how you know he's a good guy.
Lastly, the brains behind Dragon Sound, Angelo Gennati as Tom, Italian-American lead guitarist/vocalist of Dragon Sound.
And in the movie, pervert.
A little bit. Yeah, that scene, it's not one of those scenes that you watch now.
But you can watch him playing guitar on there and you'd think he was a pervert.
That's
it's not
true.
a surprise.
He pulls it off. You would believe it.
Yeah.
It's just, those are the kind of scenes in the 80s movies, I guess you just
They're
put
always
those
gonna
in
be
there.
there.
And then now it's like, why? Why did you do that?
No, although I will confess to this, when they're in 80s movies, I kind of know they're there, and it's kind of also part of the charm of like, what is this?
And nobody questioned it back then. They were just like, yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah, there's beach. You know,
you
just
grope a woman.
fall on them.
As long as you could recognize that that's bad now, but you can feel free to look back on those scenes somewhat fondly and say it was a
And
product of its
understand
time.
that this is a movie that's kind of like a carnival of errors.
So there's a couple more that I put in my credit notes that didn't go in the main wiki notes here, which is William Young, or William P. Young is his official credits. He was the club owner, club manager, who beats the shit out of a whole band and apparently wrote some of the songs in this movie.
What?
Yep, he was a force that we didn't quite foresee.
Multi-talented.
William Young, way to go. He's just club owner, he doesn't have a name. And then Uncle Song, who Brian seems to really like, was played by Richard Park, the director.
I really do like him.
That's the cook, the little small-time diner owner.
Restaurateur.
Yeah, and the kind of like the band's friend. Like, he trains with them.
You get a sense he probably feeds them when they don't have the cash, you know? He helps them out.
He's not in it for the money.
And he runs the whole place by himself. He has those little red baskets that are in restaurants like this that I love to look at.
That scene where they're first there eating a bunch.
I wanted to be in there.
Yes, I wanted some of that.
Greasy diner.
Real bad.
And you know, you got your puppy, your new puppy, you need to exercise him right. So you take him to the dog park, right? What do you do when you go to the Richard Park, aka the Dick Park? Huh?
Yeah.
It's a dick joke, guys.
I almost did this earlier.
Penis.
And I thought to myself, let's
Don't
show
do
some
that.
restraint.
And I did not.
No, that's what I love about it, is when you started, I was like, I know exactly what he's doing because I was trying to figure out a way to do it.
And keep in mind, I spent 30 minutes to get to what I did, trying to think of how to
Well,
do
that's what
that.
I'm saying.
was
That
worth
makes
it.
it so admirable. And I'd already kind of thought, like, how would I describe a park in general? So when you did that,
You knew where it was going.
yeah, I couldn't wait to see the resolution, which is kind of where mine was going to get, where I just say, yeah, it was a dick joke.
So I tried to do this where we're gonna be able to split it in a part where it makes sense. I imagine we're gonna go long in the first one, and the second one's gonna be a little shorter. But I thought we're gonna cover about the first 30 minutes and leave the last hour for the next episode. So we will start where the movie drops us into something that is really not related to the rest of the movie.
What
It's kind of a
city are
cold
we in?
open. I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually started my notes with it because we see when we start the movie a little caption at the bottom. Somewhere in Miami.
No, I need to know where. That's too vague.
Somewhere in Miami. That's all we get. So I started my notes that way. Somewhere in Miami, an 80s synthesizer drum machine combo provides the soundtrack for a big drug deal in the middle of the night. This is one of those beautiful nighttime Miami scenes in the movie that
Do you think
there's
that
several of.
the music is diegetic, I think is the word for it? Like that they're playing it.
Oh.
I like to believe at the drug deal, they're calling all this attention to themselves. They have like a boombox out there. Because it would be really fun to do a drug deal with like 80s synth music.
Sure. I mean, to me, that feels like how a drug deal would always be. I don't think they've ever aged out of the 80s for that.
No.
And I mean, there are 80s men everywhere in this scene.
I don't even know how to describe them. I just put the drug dealers are dressed for the occasion and armed to the teeth. Some of them were wearing cowboy hats, I noticed.
Yeah.
You guys are more likely
Scenery chewers.
to write down some of this stuff. Did you have any particular people that caught your eye? Because, I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Well, I said there's a guy who looks like Harold Ramis in this.
I don't know why, but that really got me just now.
We got another guy with a big permed head of gray hair.
This guy rules.
He's got gray hair that he permed. He went to a salon to get that done.
I think perms were a point of pride in the 80s.
If you didn't have a mullet, you had a perm, or you had both at the same time. And you see evidence of that in this scene.
And there are a lot of guys with, I don't know how to describe them, but it's like, I guess you would say a 50s detective hat, but white. So therefore it's like someone who owns a boat would wear it. And there are two guys shaking hands with these hats on. I can only imagine it's just because they're like same hat.
There are multiple people with white pants.
Yes.
I noticed, to be frank, more about the biker rally that takes place later in the movie and its participants.
And there's one ninja who wears white too, which seems like not a good idea to hide in the darkness in Miami to wear a white outfit.
So I described him as the white ninja initially, and I'm pretty sure that's just Yoshido because he's the one who's always in white the rest of the movie.
He's the boss.
I guess he just doesn't care.
Now, does he get to do that because he's so powerful?
Yeah, I think it's the head ninja wears white.
Or it could be, too. He's like, man, you can see me if you want. You don't stand a chance.
Nothing you can do about it.
Not
Exactly.
against Yoshido.
So there are enforcers in this cartel group because I don't know who they are. I wrote down cartel too. I heard you describe them that way as well earlier, Van. I don't know if this is actually the cartel, but like who else would it be?
Good enough.
It's drug dealer cartel people. They have enforcers there with machine guns. They're all kind of lined up and they're casually holding it. So they're there to make sure nothing goes wrong. What they don't realize is there are ninjas all over the place right now.
Not just ninjas, biker ninjas.
Yeah, motorcycle ninjas.
Ooh.
And they are crawling all over the place. I wrote down a few of the things they do. There's one like in a tree and one in the bushes, one crawling on the ground. And you get the sense as the drug deal is about to unfold, that ninjas are surrounding the place.
Yeah.
Like they do.
Somersaults.
Yeah, they're getting ready to set up an ambush. The cartel people, they have no idea that these ninjas are all over the place. They just don't know until one of them throws a ninja star into a guy's neck.
Well, that is a giveaway because no one else would do that but a ninja.
Just the ninja.
I bet that guy's fine, though. It didn't really get him too bad. I mean, it was off onto the side of the neck. I think he's okay.
Yeah, you're not worried about the jugular at all?
Not that guy. No,
Yeah,
I think he's
probably
okay.
not.
The violence that we see at the hands of these ninjas is kind of like that. Like, it is kind of gross. Like, some people might die here, I'm not sure. But you don't see a lot of it. You don't see a lot of blood or
Yeah, it's
anything.
not gratuitous. And I'm not emotionally invested in cartel people. If you want to start the movie with some murders of cartel people, that's okay.
Be my guest. Cut that one guy's arm off,
Sure.
and he screams.
Because mainly here you're just letting us know there are biker ninjas. That's what this is for.
So the cartel starts shooting wildly at this point, just kind of spray and pray, as one of the men attempts to grab the drugs and escape. Well, that doesn't work. That's where our ninja in white, Yoshido, I believe that is, immediately confronts him outside and chops deeply into his forehead with the sword.
Pretty cool.
It's just a slash mark on the forehead. He may have been fine.
It's honestly, he foregoes cutting off his head to instead hack at his forehead, which honestly, I think that means that this might be the origin story of Alan from the Online 2013. It's just instead they went vertically.
It also might have been the start of him trying to put a big Y for Yoshido in his head.
It could be that.
Like his signature.
But then, the drug deal falls apart. Alan's in trouble, so he gets in witness protection, moves to wherever Online 2013 took place,
Heaven.
gets a job at a marketing firm, becomes holier than thou.
Finds Jesus, yeah.
That's it.
I'm mostly on board with that. Just the direction of the cut doesn't quite hold up. It would have had to have been an axe. Elsewhere, a ninja shoots another cartel member with an arrow.
Don't care for that. I don't think ninjas should have bow and arrows.
But I love that in this movie that's in there too. Because
Sure.
it's just yet another thing shoved into this movie. Like, wait, why do they have arrows? Why are they on motorcycles?
I guess just whatever's quiet. If there's a quiet weapon you can think of, let's give the ninjas that.
Well, that's also a great part about the motorcycles is it's like the loudest thing you could possibly drive. And then they're ninjas.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, we've got the ninja cartel people or whatever. We've got the other people doing the drug deal. One of them looks like Elton John. He has an Elton John haircut, Elton John glasses, and an Uzi. And he somersaults around the scene, shooting his Uzi at the same time.
Like a real rocket man.
I don't think that's in the instruction booklet for your Uzi. Like, don't, toss and tumble around.
Don't do gymnastics
No, I-
while using it.
I did notice that the cartel people, once the ninjas attacked, were all too willing to kind of fight the ninjas on their terms. They didn't just actually mow the ninjas down. They let them they wanted to separate them and go one-on-one with various
Certain
ninjas.
amount of honor in this cartel.
I guess so. It just doesn't seem like they played to their strengths. So I stopped writing down what happened because it's just mayhem everywhere at this point. And you kind of see, you go shot by shot watching the ninjas convincingly annihilate the cartel. One guy gets his arm chopped off, like we talked about. It's mostly just the cartel starts doing their part to remind us this is a martial arts movie. They really should have just been shooting the ninjas.
That's what's cool too about this movie is that even the extras do know martial arts. Like every character that pops up knows how to do it, at least kind of.
Based on this movie, I think everyone in Miami knows how to do Taekwondo in some capacity.
This might be like the dream world that YK Kim wishes existed, where just everywhere you go, everyone's probably a black belt Taekwondo person. Anyway, the ninjas win. They grab the drugs. They escape on their motorcycles because they're motorcycle riding ninjas. And they return to the safety of their evil dojo, where all the evil ninjas meet after their evil heists. These are Yoshido's men. The man in white himself, he's the leader of this evil motorcycle ninja group. From his position at the head of the dojo seating arrangement, because they don't know what that position is called, on the floor.
Shogun?
Maybe.
I don't know.
That'd be cool. Yoshido scolds the ninjas for leaving behind the most important thing. The money.
Dummies.
So now we know Yoshido isn't just a bad guy and a killer, he's heartless, since money is more important than people.
Kind of, but he has set up, and this dojo is part of it, a sanctuary for ninjas.
Well, he's mad they didn't get the money, but then he goes, do not make a mistake again. Like typically they would have the villain kill one of the ninjas, even though they're on his side, but he scolds them a little.
Well, that's later, though, when he kills a guy, just for telling him a thing.
Go frolic in the adjoining stream.
So this is one thing about them setting Yoshido up. They make him have a very clear line where it's like, you forgot the most important thing, the money, where it's like, okay, you're not supposed to like Yoshido. Got it. I understand. So then Yoshido says he's just fucking around. He got the money himself. So no one's actually in trouble. Like Van said, he was like, just don't do that again. I got the money, but we really need to be getting the money.
I need to write you up and file this with HR.
This will be one demerit.
So that was the intro of Miami Connection. It has nothing to do with the rest of it because ultimately Dragon Sound is not really directly involved in any of this cartel stuff or the drugs. Not in the slightest bit. They're mostly just reacting to what's about to happen. So that's the intro. It's time for some badass music and a credit sequence. This is our first look at Dragon Sound. I wrote down is an amazing 80s rock and roll band who also happens to feature all members of black belts in Taekwondo, like we talked about.
The 80s cheese hits you smack in the fucking face right away, and I love every second of it.
They immediately just go right into that in this movie. The intro is like, what, not even 10 minutes? And then we're already hit with what Dragon Sound does best after that.
Kind of be enveloped in fog, too.
And I think this movie, if you've watched it before, everyone remembers the Friends song. Everyone remembers Against the Ninja. The song that plays here is called Escape from Miami. And it's a good one. It may not be as good, but I think it's a good one. Here, I'll read you some lyrics and we'll see what you think. We've got, and keep in mind, I'm going to just say it, but the person singing it goes, "Black is my day." So imagine that while it's happening. He says, "Bikers by day, ninjas by night, swift and fierce, not afraid to fight. Steal all your cocaine along with your life. Strike with no mercy into the night. Striking the victim, escaping by bike, leaving no trails deep into the night. Look in your shadow, meet life's last breath. Violence the motto, no fear of death."
So it's kind of about the intro.
It is. It explains the movie.
This movie is a bit of a musical.
Kind of, when you say it like that. And actually the end of it, too, when we get the end credits, has a little bit of that. The first lyrics of that are what we just kind of finished seeing.
And even the songs, the message of the songs, those kind of just take the place of actual plot that tell us that these people are friends.
Oh, yeah, and in that song, there's a spaceship noise, like a Jetsons, like...
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, why not? We also get more looks at Yoshido and his men while this song plays. It's kind of serving two purposes. We're transitioning from Yoshido's location at the dojo to the party that they're going to have, because they just pulled off this heist, and I don't know, what do you do after you pull off a heist? You celebrate, obviously.
Yeah, and Richard Park's really showing off here. He's like, I know how many things you can show are happening at once, and it's more than one. It could be 3.
The one that he does that I like the most is when he sets a bunch of like stuff on fire and then karate chops through it.
Well, that's great.
I told you he's a cool dude.
Does the fire make it easier to chop the bricks, I wonder? Or harder?
That's a good question.
I don't know. It just
fire
looked like
tempers.
It looks like the fire was kind of doing the work for him a little bit. Like he'd already burnt the bricks, and then all I had to do was just kind of breathe on it a little bit.
I'm not going to stand for this evil villain slander.
Do you have to quench these bricks?
Your bricks will kill.
So toward the end of the song, as it starts to fade out a little bit, we meet another kind of shady looking guy who Yoshido is apparently meeting. We talked about him already. He's got big hair. He's got a big beard. He's got some really dramatic pointy earrings. This is Jeff.
Real baggy pants.
Mm-hmm.
The kind you would wear in the 80s.
I really don't like when villains are named like Jeff. That doesn't get the point across to me.
They really could have worked a little harder on a lot of these names.
I don't know who named the characters, but it's a lot like, I assume it's YK Kim, because he kind of has a little bit of an auteur syndrome that comes through in this movie. But much like Tommy Wiseau, I think he overestimated his ability to come up with a wide range of memorable names for characters.
Yeah, we could have done better than Jeff, that's for sure. I'm perfectly fine with Yoshido. That's pretty memorable.
Yeah, that's a great name.
Yoshido and Jeff, the two big criminal masterminds of the area.
And Angelo Giannotti's character's name is Tom when it should have just been Angelo Giannotti.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we should at least, no one calls him this in the movie, but I think we should call him Tommy, because I just feel like that's more fitting.
That does fit
he
a little
looks
more.
like a Tommy, not a Tom.
Hey, Tommy, what are you doing over there making them songs for Dragon Sound?
So these two are on friendly terms, Yoshido and Jeff. And right out of the gate, we learn, if we couldn't already tell, Jeff is bad news. He's on Yoshido's side. For now, though, they're not doing anything bad. They just want to have some fun and do some partying. Yoshido lets Jeff know he scored a new supply of Coke as they all head inside.
It's good stuff, too.
And he pointedly informs him it's the best.
Yeah, and let's say it as loudly as we can in public.
And then assures him that he moves a lot of Coke in Orlando, even though I imagine they kind of already know what the other person does.
I bet you've never heard out loud from anyone who's actually sold drugs. Yeah, I move a ton of Coke in Orlando.
Really good Coke, too. You got to check it out.
There are hundreds of people surrounding us right now.
I mean, we might be building a little character for Yoshido here. He's very brazen. He wears white even though he's stealthy. He talks about his drug operation out in the open. He doesn't give a shit.
He has those cool tinted glasses.
I think maybe Yoshido just doesn't care. Inside, a club manager who I really love is in a white suit, is excitedly introducing to a raucous crowd the hottest new fucking band in the area,
and
Dragon
he's
Sound.
Right, too.
And behind him is a ceiling fan. And I don't know why, but this bothered me. I'm like, I guess nightclubs have ceiling fans, but they feature it so prominently.
I don't think they do.
We're in like blowjob position for this club owner guy looking up, and behind him is a giant ceiling fan.
So this is clearly filmed in I don't know, like, I've seen so many bands play, and I don't remember ever seeing a ceiling fan in a place of this size.
It's a big place.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people here.
I feel like a club would be a good place for a ceiling fan. You get real hot in there doing all your dance moves.
Yeah, I think you need vents is what you need. Just air.
And if it wasn't hot in there before, after Dragon Sound plays.
Oh, yeah. Whew. You risk actually the whole place catching fire.
I guess we could then say that based on Brian's reaction here, that Brian is against the ceiling fan.
I just feel like that's throwing like a cup of water on a big fire.
Knowing that Dragon Sound's introduced here, guys, of course it's time for another song. And not just any song. This is actually the headliner, Friends' masterpiece. We get to hear the whole thing. It's about 3 minutes and some change, and as well as watch the group's impressive stage work. Jane, who is Jeff's sister, of course, and is dating John, the bassist in the group, doesn't really have a part in the song, but she is kind of there wandering around the stage, dancing throughout the whole thing.
Clapping a little.
She's trying to participate in this song, but she doesn't really have a role in Friends, per se. Let's have a brief listen at Friends, just so we can give everyone an idea of what kind of gem we're dealing with here. Yeah, so you're hit right up top with this song. It's awesome. We liked it from the beginning, the first time we ever heard it. Of course, it's very repetitive and kind of dumb, but you can't not get into the energetic feeling behind it.
It's just so perfect for what it needs to be.
Yeah.
You can relate to it. Everybody has friends.
As long as you don't expect too much from it, there's nothing wrong with that song. It's pretty delightful.
And this is our first real good look at our assortment of Orphans, as we'll come to find out.
Do you guys want to get into them, or do you want to save that for a little bit?
It's your show, buddy. Your call.
You know what? I don't mind. We haven't really talked about who we're dealing with. We just mentioned the name, so you guys go ahead if you have some thoughts on what they did on the performance there.
Well, my most important factoid is that, we're being introduced to these guys. We don't know how to think about them, so we need to look to other people. What's their reaction? And the crowd here of hundreds of people losing their shit, clapping, in love with Dragon Sound. So I, too, am in love with Dragon Sound. Oh, yeah, we got the Italian guy.
Tommy. Yeah, Tommy looks like a Hall or an Oates, whichever one
Oates.
looks like that.
I looked it up.
Oates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he
John
looks
Oates.
a lot like Oates. He is really ripping on his guitar. He's the singer here. Unlike later, we'll see Jane take over lead vocals.
And we can see he can play guitar.
Yeah, he's good.
He likely does for these songs. He probably played it.
And they did bring Angelo Gennati on board. You won't believe this. Is not a martial arts guy. He's just there for the music.
Well, and that actually makes sense because later he's unable to acquit himself in a situation where he's won on a bunch of ninjas and the rest of them can.
Later on, they do give him one fight thing where he's like swinging from a pole or something and kicking someone, and that's all he did.
They should have had him like whomp a guy with his guitar.
And John, the bassist, Katie actually mentioned to me, the lanky guy is what I call him. He looks a little bit like if Michael Phelps wasn't doing as well.
Yeah,
I can
sure.
see that. I agree. I didn't notice that until you said it. They even have a similar build.
And he's kind of our main character that's younger, I guess. Like YK Kim's kind of our main character, but actually John maybe more so is.
I agree.
Yeah.
John is really important. And I also missed all the other times that we were watching this movie. John is actually quite good at martial arts. He's clearly second best behind YK Kim.
Like he looks like a doofus, but I wouldn't want to fight him. I'll put it that way, or anyone.
Well, the key three then are YK Kim, John here, the bassist, and Jack, who's we find out Israeli guy. Those three do martial arts throughout the movie.
We don't get as much of Jack doing it as I would have
Not
thought.
as much.
But yeah, he definitely was a student of YK Kim's and I think should have done some more Taekwondo.
Those are the top three, and then we've got Jim, the
Jim,
black
I guess,
guy.
was also a
He does
student,
little.
but he sure didn't get much.
To be fair, he's focused on personal stuff.
Yeah, he's the more emotional center of the movie, as
exactly.
you said earlier.
So from the crowd, as this is happening, Jeff recognizes Jane on the stage, and Yoshido helps the audience out because you're watching this the first time. You're like, what's going on here? And he says, "Hey, Jeff, is that your sister, Jane? Does she work here? What's she doing here? So we got some problems." Jeff acknowledges, "Yeah, that is my sister. And I don't know. She's not supposed to be. This is really weird and stupid." And Jeff's response is so canned.
Absurd?
"She's not supposed to be here. I don't understand." He's actually upset about this development for some reason.
He's an overprotective older brother, but they're both adults, and also, like, they're not making it clear why
it's a
he's
problem.
concerned.
Well,
No.
Yoshida's like, "Jeff, your sister's up there with that band who sings about being friends. That's the wrong kind of people."
It's the first time in the movie where we get a sense that the bad guys are like, this goddamn band.
Yoshida tells Jeff, "You better watch her," are his exact words. And then he pulls him
Which
away.
they are. She's on a stage.
So they can enjoy their boys' night out together. The song continues. The band gets back to their act. At one point, the bass player, John, even shares a loving kiss with Jane.
Uh-oh.
And that's where we get the sense that I think something's going on between John and Jane.
This is sort of like when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was shot. It like sets into motion the string of events of a war.
That's exactly right.
Miami Connection equals World War I.
Right.
Same level of importance.
Okay, I'll admit this is scaled down a bit.
But not much.
I mean, Miami's pretty big.
So Jeff observes this and shakes his head disapprovingly. And yet, I like this part, he can't help but clink glasses with Ishida when the song ends.
Yeah, they toast anyway. They're like, well,
So he's like, I hate that my sister's up there, but that's a good song.
they're my arch nemesis, but I'll be damned if those weren't some great hooks.
I can respect their music.
And meanwhile, the crowd is roaring its approval. Like Van mentioned earlier, they are huge on Dragon Sound.
And I do feel like because YK Kim, as we mentioned, who's not playing any music, he's strutting his ass around. I feel like if we take this movie as a real moment, the real band Dragon Sound, I think they gave him a guitar and said, no, yours doesn't need to plug in. They'll be able to hear it.
Right.
So go ahead. Go to town.
You do whatever you want on there, put on a show, but maybe try to fight one of the amps, which would be entertaining.
When I'm playing my music, stop grabbing my nose with your foot.
Guys, let's not forget that these are all college students, though. So the next scene is a jarring cut to the middle of the day on the University of Central Florida campus.
Which presumably is one of the donors to this movie. I mean, they're
They
in
get
it a lot
featured
by
prominently.
name.
Mhm.
This set features a bunch of totally believable college students, and they're all milling about, thinking about what do college students think about academics and keg stands.
When I was in college, I do remember that every time I would arrive with my giant group of friends, because we all had classes at the same time,
Mhm.
that we would greet and shake hands with all the other students we came across.
Yeah, it just seemed like a really natural, believable college campus. I was like, yeah, they nailed it.
That's one of my favorite little things about this movie, the weird handshake ritual of this college.
It happens multiple times where the other students on this campus really want Dragon Sound's autograph.
Right now, we get to learn a little bit more about Jane, though, not Dragon Sound, which, another thing, has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, but I want to talk about how Jane is a wizard programmer.
She's a programmer. She programs circles.
Really good at it. She's hard at work on an 80s computer in her programming class, and the professor is talking about how their team finished 4th in the international programming contest.
Hell yeah, University of Central Florida, go!
That's such a
Gators.
lazy thing. The international programming contest just happened, and we finished 4th.
I like the restraint, though, to make it 4th.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
It is a good touch. Now, what do you think they programmed? Because remember, this is 1986,
Do we
1987.
think the people who wrote the movie know what they programmed?
No.
No.
No, they did the best they could to make this believable, but you can tell there's not a lot of details to be had here.
Maybe they think it's Pac-Man.
I bet they programmed like a clock. Like that's the extent, or like a calculator.
Yeah, the breakthrough applications of that time period for computer usage, they weren't much. The fact that Jane is programming a circle on her computer tells us a lot of information.
Well, you
and
think
that's
that
all it is because the teacher comes over and goes,
Yeah, but
great
that's-
circle,
that's
Jane.
That's the best fucking circle I've ever seen, Jane.
you think that, but then I was looking on IMDb and Jane's last name is Google.
Oh, we're watching it happen in the garage here.
Yeah, if you look at the very edge of the scene, you can actually see a young Steve Jobs over there in the corner.
Maybe they invented Snake, the DOS game. Could be.
But they didn't invent snakes. That was the guy from last week, God.
Yeah.
This does give John a chance to show us how in love he and Jane are. The lanky bass player with feelings for Jane is outside the class, calling her name, making funny faces at her from out in the hallway. And Jane is in her puppy love stage, so she's like, oh, he's so funny.
It's lovey-dovey.
He's so adorable.
If you made these characters 5 years old, this actually lines up a little better.
Oh, my big ghoulish skeleton boyfriend is so cute.
Oh, he made a monkey face at me.
Soon they're walking arm in arm outside, and another campus shot. This is a terribly forced and awkward scene, but we have to have the conversation at some point how Jane and Jeff are siblings. And this conflict needs to be within Dragon Sound's awareness, so they don't know how to do it. It has to happen through forced exposition dialogue. And that's what John asking, hey, so when you have any family, you haven't really met anyone, and that is actually how the dialogue goes here. John asks about her family. She says, my brother pays for my school, but he sucks. And then she tells him just a horribly sad story about the rest of her family.
What about your parents?
Well, they were divorced when I was young. My dad took off with some young girl and left my mom and my brother and myself, and she had to raise us all by herself. She had a tough life, and she, shortly after that, died. And my father died a little while after he left us.
There's some good footsteps in the background.
Yeah,
there
this
too.
actually did win the Sound Mixing Academy Award in 1988.
This would be a real bummer of a story if you could hear it over the fact that they put microphones on everyone's feet.
To make matters worse, the scene continues with the two walking in a distant shot. They're clearly not speaking anymore, but we've got some dubbed audio.
There's a lot of that in this movie.
Yeah. I'm thinking that's when YK Kim had some time to go back to it and touch it up. And he's like, we didn't make this clear. Let's have the actors talk over the scene when they're clearly not talking to each other.
Yeah, and
anymore.
they're worse at reading lines that way.
Well, there is a benefit to being back in the 80s when resolution was bad. You probably couldn't notice that they weren't speaking as well. Now, with screens being huge and being able to zoom in or whatever, it's so painfully obvious.
Because it's not even close to syncing up a couple of times.
The added dialogue is just so that Jane can tell John, by the way, you just asked about my family. Guess what? My horrible brother is actually coming here to meet me on campus right now, today.
Do you guys think he's going to be cool about all this?
Oh, sure.
There's a word of warning that Jane gives him, which is he's involved with a group of shady characters and is extremely jealous. She's really set the stage for good old Jeff, who we're about to meet in person.
And by the way, this whole walk and talk really hits close to home for me because the two actors, Jane and John here, John is 6'9", Jane is maybe 5'4", something short. And so they're trying to hold a conversation and he's stooping down to her. And this is something I've had to do with, an ex-girlfriend, but I wasn't being framed for a film, so I didn't have to make it all fit in the screen. He does, and it looks real weird.
It does. And I would argue that the two of them do a very bad job at presenting as some kind of love interest, like new spark relationship thing. It's not really coming through.
Yeah, it doesn't really show until you get to the sex scenes later.
Right on schedule, Jeff and his goons arrive in a trail of loud cars. They park recklessly in the accessible parking spaces, by the way, which is really mean.
Yet another of their crimes.
And they jump out aggressively in a big, threatening group of toughness. The tone is briefly warm, actually, though, as Jeff and Jane go in for a brother-sister hug. And in fairness, it's actually John who's being weird here. While they're hugging, he's just staring at Jeff.
Glaring.
Yeah, it's fine right now, John. Nothing's happening.
I think he's just impressed by the hair density.
I do like the fact that there's this idea that Jeff, when he goes to pick up his sister from school, brings his whole cabal along with him.
And it's like this rowdy bunch of weirdos we see throughout the movie, because Jeff has his own dojo too. And unlike Yoshido's really cool wood nymph place, it's more of like a 90s WWF locker room kind of a place.
It's a dirty gym in a strip mall.
I bet it smells really bad in there.
Ooh.
And some of these guys are here, like the biker cap guy and the
heavyset guy.
Ooh, I don't know how to describe that guy.
Heavyset guy.
He looks a lot like if Patrick from SpongeBob,
or a person.
Or a person, yeah.
After the introductions are made, it's really all on Jeff for making things weird.
Where'd you find this son of a bitch?
He's a friend of mine from school.
A friend?
How can you act like that?
Shut up!
Wow.
Oh.
So you can hear that things took a violent turn here.
Thumps him good.
Before we go into the details of the aftermath of the way Jeff's being, you know what, I would say he's not being very friendly.
I think he's hot-heading around.
He might be. Let's get into the details of that after the break. So upset by how Jeff's been behaving, Jane starts pounding on Jeff's chest and asking how he can even call himself her brother. Jeff tells Jane, that guy, he's just not for you. Thankfully for John, he's no longer in this battle alone, though, because it just so happens the rest of Dragon Sound was pretty close by in campus anyway. They were just a couple
They
feet away.
always are. They kind of have sonar for one another.
And they were all together. The rest of the band, I guess they all take the same classes or something, because they were all together in a convenient group. They rush over. Mark is, of course, at the forefront because he's the great protector.
He comes running in, just shouting gibberish, and it's not the last time we're going to see that exact same thing happen.
He's trying to play peacemaker, but like Van said, most everything that comes out of his mouth is unintelligible and probably just sounds threatening. He's trying to tell Jeff it's a misunderstanding. The fact that you punched him for no reason is a misunderstanding, and we don't want any trouble. Look, we'll leave you alone, you leave us alone, essentially.
So Dragon Sound, now we know they've got an uphill battle because they have to deal with Jeff being mad at them, and Jeff has his own whole group of, scuzz buckets.
Oh, yeah.
Scuzz buckets.
But perhaps there'll be even more groups that are angry with Dragon Sound.
I have a feeling you're right. Jeff makes it clear he does not want John hanging around his sister anymore. He does seem to be implying, if you just leave my sister alone, you guys are fine. I won't beat you up. I'm a terrible guy, but you're safe if you just let Jane go away from
and
you
that's
guys.
where the Romeo and Juliet element comes in.
Oh, yeah. And Mark says, whatever, we're leaving. Kinda. What he really says is, we're not scared of you at all. Goodbye. But not much of that comes out very audibly.
Goodbye is my favorite. You just beat up my friend. Goodbye.
I was reading kind of like a more deep dive into this movie where the writer described that scene as like, you're expecting sparring, but instead it's even better. You get verbal sparring between Mark and Jeff.
And it's oddly formal.
What Brian just alluded to is what I have written in my notes is what the real meat and potatoes plot of the story is, which is the rival band that Dragon Sound dethroned when they made big waves in the Central Florida rock and roll music scene.
What is this band called, do you think?
Okay, in the YouTube video I was telling you guys earlier, Zach Carlson had mentioned when he did the YouTube video, the rival band, since there's a little riff on them playing music for older people, we're referring to them in that video as the Vengeful Dads.
Oh, wow.
I'm okay with it.
I can get behind that. They are very dad-like. There's one guy who's smoking a cigarette, and he looks like the Mike Myers character from the Bears skits.
The guy with the Coca-Cola shirt on?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I like these guys. I don't know what kind of music they would play. I can't even picture
Isn't
any
it
of them playing
shame
music.
we didn't get one of their songs? I feel like
Yeah.
we need to get that to know what's at stake
The
for
main
them.
guy with the beard here, he's like 42 and he's got like tinted glasses. And he is very
Worked up.
he's real mad and he lifts a lot of weights. Like he's really in shape for his age.
But I think he drinks a decent amount of beer. There's
Yeah.
squishiness going on
I'd
there.
say his diet's not great, but he probably does work out a lot.
Yeah, like he wouldn't be able to martial arts fight you, but if he broke a beer bottle over a pool table, you'd be afraid.
So this is taking place, by the way, we meet this rival band, the Vengeful Dads, at the club where that performance first took place, and our club manager in white introduced them as the next big thing. We're back there, and he's just tending to his club owner business by himself when this other band storms in, and clearly they're looking for a fight. Van just mentioned him. One of them is smoking and wearing a Coca-Cola shirt. The club manager approaches, and just on sight, this group is angry at each other immediately.
What are you in here for, man? Waste
Hey, look,
my time?
bitch.
I thought I fired you once.
You fired me once because of the goddamn Dragon Sound? That's bullshit. They came in here to play goddamn songs for kids. Now who you bullshit?
They play a lot better than you, man. Your
They play
music's
nothing but
for old
goddamn
people.
kiddie music.
Your music's for old
Hey,
people,
look,
buddy.
fat man, you don't know what music's all about.
It keeps going. I cut it off there, but
Yeah.
they're not done.
Can you imagine getting fired because of Dragon Sound?
Yeah, this scene rules. Well, you heard why, but also the club owner, the way this scene is framed, it's not blocked right. There's not enough time for everyone to get in position while they're reading their lines. So the director has the club owner descend a little bit and then walk across the club toward the band as they enter. And he has to walk too slow. So everybody's real worked up, but everybody's walking at half speed.
And they, of course, I guarantee the dialogue, the script said, yell at each other.
Yeah.
It didn't say anything specific because that's all they do is yell.
Yeah, and these are maybe not gifted improv performers.
I would say that's probably true.
Yeah, you don't got Wayne Brady and Colin Mockery up there. I can
I
tell
didn't
you
see
that.
Ryan Stiles anywhere.
The leader of the band of the Vengeful Dads, he's leaning hard on that bullshit. Dragon sound, bullshit. They play music for kids. He throws that out there pretty much every time somebody says anything to him the whole movie. Bullshit!
He's like if David Crosby were in this movie.
So as you can tell from that clip, though, things are about to get physical. They're going to switch from words to actions very quickly. Plus, it's YK Kim's movie, so we know that everything is always just building to a fight. It's always a matter of time in this.
And I'll admit, there's some casual racism that came out from me in this because I see YK Kim and I go, okay, that guy probably knows martial arts, some capacity. I did not look at this guy, this club owner, and go, okay, white, kind of thick guy. He clearly knows how to beat some ass. But then he does.
He does. Another thing, though, is aside from that assumption, which I had too, Van, I also kind of assumed at this juncture in the movie you need some adversity, so probably this guy gets jumped by these 4 guys, and that's another reason for Dragon Sound to be engaged in this. But no, every time a good guy is faced with anything in this movie, the good guy beats up 100 people.
The practitioners of Taekwondo are always outnumbered, always on the right side, and they always win.
Even if the other guys have like a lot of weaponry.
Oh, yeah. So this scene, it seems like it would be a very bad thing for the club manager that things were about to get physical because there's, 4 or 5 band members and then just one club owner. But when the fists start flying, as we've alluded to, the club manager dominates.
Beats some ass.
He kicks the shit out of every one of those band members.
Real Steve Blackman type.
So he's clearly a martial arts expert himself. He beats the shit out of the entire band. Not only are they fired because their music is for old people, they also got their asses kicked by the guy who fired them. So that's just a real big low point for the Vengeful Dads.
You ever gotten your ass kicked by somebody who fired you before?
No.
I haven't yet. Steve Weimer ever beat your ass, friend?
Not so far. And I think we're past the time when he could, if there was one.
I think the 3 of us could beat his ass, I'm sure.
I don't think I'd have the heart to, even though I hate
No,
the guy.
me
It's like,
either.
I hate the guy, but I don't want to.
I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd splash some orange juice
I'd be
on him.
afraid I'd knock his skin off. I really, really enjoy how before this jilted band leaves, that main singer guy, who, again, one of my favorite characters, he turns around and threatens the guy, and he's like, I'll kill his ass.
But you know what he does when he does that? He takes his sport coat, which he's taken off to fight, and like swings it at him.
Yeah, just
like,
kind
what's
of
somebody- It's like,
loosely.
ow, you kind of hit me
It's
with a
also
coat.
just a great thing to say after you and your 3 friends all got just laid to waste by one guy.
I'll
a
kill your
businessman
ass.
at that.
It's also very obvious it was improv because the band leader guy, when they're kind of going at it after the fight, this is right after they've had a vicious fist fight. He says, don't you give me a poor time.
You know, another great thing about this guy playing old-timey music that's phased out, as this movie is in 87. Did he play like doo-wop or something? I love the idea of this gruff guy being like, be my baby tonight.
I wish so much that we'd gotten at least one song from these guys. And who knows? We might think like, all right, maybe they're even better than Dragon Sound. Dragon Sound is just more current and they're tapped into the scene that they want at this time period. But maybe it was unfair.
Yeah, and instead of doing Taekwondo on stage as part of the act, they sit in recliners and drink beer. Maybe rip a phone book in half.
The other option for them being, old people music would be like 60s prog rock.
Yeah.
So they're sitting up there playing like 15-minute Yes songs.
Yeah,
That's what it
that could be. Or they could be like a Beatles cover band. Or they could play like
Lucy in the Sky. With
that
Diamonds.
kind of thing, like a psychedelic thing.
Oh.
I like that. I can see that.
Yeah.
This next scene is a little, I almost didn't put it in.
You know, the exposition phone call
I want to
scene?
talk about it. There's some flags blowing in the wind and a phone call between Jeff and I guess Yoshida's people where he just says like, I need to get the money. And he's setting up some meeting with his motorcycle ninja leader buddy. That's all I could really glean from that.
But the main thing is what's going on during this phone call.
Flags are blowing in the wind.
Flags everywhere, man.
They say Bayside.
Okay, the whole thing with they didn't have a single person who knew how to make a movie while making this movie makes this scene make more sense because they probably looked at it in post and they're like, no one knows why we're doing whatever. We got to add something.
I think
so
they
let's
had
do an exposition phone call.
Like we talked about with the dubbing over when Jane and John are walking and talking when they added that extra little dialogue. I think at some point YK Kim went over this and was like, this transition here is confusing people. So let's add this.
It turns
and it'll
out
make more sense.
no one knows why anything in this movie is.
I just picture YK Kim in a dark room with like a dozen monitors above him and he's watching and editing, doing the movie and like, I need to add the exposition here. Yes. then the movie will be complete.
I bet he was. He was like those 70s auteur directors, just in there all night long cutting film.
It's really sad to think of him in the immediate aftermath of pouring his heart out and bankrupting himself, spending $1 million on this and being told it was a piece of shit, and then trying to go through it and be like, what can I do to fix it? And these are the ideas he had.
Well, I can't imagine anyone having any complaints, but let me see if I can address some of these.
I'm sure it's just these 3 or 4 transitions aren't really logical.
Can you imagine, though, 30 years later, the joy of learning that your movie, which has been shit on and it's in your past, suddenly has a following and people love it? Something about that is
it's nice,
heartwarming.
It really
and
is
delightful for me.
It's going to be like how one day someone's going to discover one of our old forgotten podcasts.
Oh, The Slow Descent as presented by Bootu.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
That one where we talk about bones, which we've now done a lot.
several times.
Can't wait to do it again.
It'll happen this Christmas.
So Jeff and Yoshido are meeting at our favorite dojo setting, which is kind of like in the forest and just looks really
I
relaxing.
want to go there now. The sound when the ninjas march up and down that wood tree fort thing, I love it.
It's like a little day in the life of a ninja going on in the background, like what they do when they're peaceful little training. It's kind of like how I picture the setting of a monk.
Yeah.
Except, they're training to kill and do very non-religious sort of things.
We're like up in the mountains of Tibet.
It just looks really peaceful.
Ra's al Ghul is training Batman here.
I'm not normally like an outdoor appreciator. I don't care about that kind of thing. It just looks like a nice place.
Oh,
The
this
sun's
looks great.
shining and it's cool.
I like this sort of outdoor setting. A lot of green. There's a lot of plant life, and again, the bridge, the wooden bridge. I really like that. It's very appealing.
Okay, what I'm about to say is going to sound very sad, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was thinking about this the other day. What would be like the ultimate experience in life that I would love to experience is waking up one day and you come to the back porch of your house that you own and you sit down and you just look at nature. And it's your place, and maybe there's a little pond or maybe there's something. And it's just like, I will never get to experience that. It made me sad.
No, you won't.
No. But anyway, it made me feel like this is the setting.
It'd be really cool to...
Yeah, Yoshido has that. What
Yoshido
you just
realized the
described.
dream that you will not be able to realize, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will die sad
Well,
and have never
that's
woken up and looked at nature.
The problem with this aggressive late-stage capitalism is it always
here it
benefits Yoshido more than you.
How it always goes.
And that's what everyone says, too. Everyone's out there talking about how Yoshido's doing fine right now.
I'll tell you right now, Yoshido gets busted for whatever. He's not going to be punished because he's got money. We don't have a justice system. We have a punishment system that's catered
And it's why I
to
have
the
that
rich.
bumper sticker on my car, Ayab, all Yoshidos are bad.
By the way, I wanted to mention, Jeff is normally not looking like he does in this scene.
He puts a suit on.
He's all spruced up.
He looks good, man.
He looks like I guess he's leaning into the business part of it.
What do you guys think about this light gray 80s style of suit?
I
Light
like
gray
it.
I do too. It's like one of the
I like
only
gray.
80s colors that I like.
I'm a big fan of really anything gray. So yeah, I
The
think
suit
gray fashion is
at the
great.
end of the movie that we get for one of our good characters.
good one.
That's a good
And
looking
also,
suit.
Cool suit.
Jim really pulls it off.
He does.
I can tell that's like a tailored suit. So Jeff, I think, seems like he's really taking this business meeting with Yoshido seriously. I think he wants to impress him. And again, Yoshido is making a point here to kind of touch base with Jeff. He asks him about Jane once again, like, hey, how are things going with Jane?
yeah, like
he's
he has an
concerned.
interest in his personal life.
They definitely have a bond, these two guys. They're actually fond of each other. And by the way, of course, Jeff's answer on the Jane situation is, she's still hanging out with that goddamn dragon sound.
Get rid of this band.
There's such a problem for Jeff.
Scooby-Doo and those meddling kids.
Jeff is concerned and doesn't quite have a solution on that just yet. Yoshido says, well, you'd better take care of her. And while you're at it, you need to get rid of that band so you can control the area.
A lot of drug dealers have this problem. A band gets in there and fucks everything up.
Jeff says, yeah, I got it. That's fine. I'll take care of it. All right, next, we get to talk about one of Brian's favorite characters, Uncle Song,
Yeah.
who runs a top-notch little, I think, Korean diner.
And a really fitting name for this movie. He's helping a band out, Uncle Song.
This food is so good, all of Dragonstown can't help but just moan as they eat it.
Yeah, and
just
kind of
scarf
say
it
things
down.
like, good,
I'm in heaven.
tasty,
It does look pretty good.
It does.
delicious.
So delicious. Make the boys go crazy.
They also make sure that as they're eating to mention how they're in a hurry. So we kind of get a sense that this is a pre-show meal.
Oh man, we're in a hurry. We actually need this scene to be short.
And then there's some kind of suggestion too, like, yo, we need to get a move on or something. It's just
yeah, one of them's like,
terribly awkward.
we only have so long until we play our next song at the club. Only one song, though. That's how long our shows are.
I couldn't figure out which one of the band members, but one of them is so impressed with this meal that he's like, you need to give Mark the recipe, Uncle Song. They're just having a good time. It's a delicious meal.
Like Mark can equal Uncle Song in the kitchen. Mark's good at plenty, but...
I can't see Mark in their college campus dorm room cooking Uncle Song's food for them. It's just not going to happen.
Based on this movie, the only cooking/food thing that Mark knows how to do is to stuff fruit in other people's mouths.
Especially grapes. So Uncle Song watches happily, very close to the table as they eat their food, and he just seems like he's very pleased that they're able to fill up on his hard work.
And I don't remember where it is. It may be here, but they kind of offhand mention that Uncle Song does also train with them.
Of course.
In martial arts.
Yeah.
He's a pal of the band, a friend of the band, and just a good guy.
And Uncle Song's probably in his 50s. He's a wizened ninja / restaurateur.
He's the Yoda of this movie.
Sure.
He has a green lightsaber.
Yeah.
So you know how they mentioned when they were eating, like, we got to hurry up and do this. That's because it's time for another Dragon Sound performance.
Hell yes.
This time it's against the ninja. An upbeat, fiery anthem about standing up to those vicious, violent ninjas.
Hey.
Everyone knows they're bad.
They added pyrotechnics to their whole thing.
Yeah.
They've got explosions. It's really cool.
We see the stage show kind of upping its game throughout the movie.
I'm a fan. Like, I think Jane having the main vocalist duties on this one just kind of spices the scene up. It's
Yeah.
more interesting than the last one.
The guitar players on this song have decided it is not important to get out of Jane's way at all. That everyone the whole time should just be doing whatever they want to do, really. To the song's credit, it's a lot of fun.
Let's have a listen to that. A brief sample of Against the Ninja.
Against the ninja, we will fight the battle to win. Against the ninja.
So the club manager, by the way, is watching all this from the crowd, clearly just really pleased with his choice. He's like, yeah, I'm really glad I got rid of the vengeful dads. This is definitely the right answer. He's got a girl under each arm in the process. The song wraps up with Tommy leaping up to center stage to perform a wild guitar solo.
He
Needless to
shreds,
say,
man.
the crowd, again, fucking nuts. They just love Against the Ninja and Dragon Sound.
And they should.
So after another great show, which Brian mentioned may have just been one song, Dragon Sound is riding a wave of post-performance euphoria. The rival band, though, they have plans to put a stop to that.
After you play a show, you always have to be ready. You can't be resting on your laurels like you're not going to get in a ninja fight right after.
Most times, most bands, they usually have like 50-50 odds of a ninja attack.
I wouldn't even bother loading the equipment until you've scouted the area.
There's an entire like Frankenstein mob of people here, and they have like sticks and torches.
So as Dragon Sound hops into their car to ride off, they arrive and leave in one car, apparently. That rival band, they put their personal plan into motion, which is to race off after them as part of the trap that they're springing. They're the ones behind them. The other part is what Van referred to. It's a whole mob of angry men with a bunch of weapons, and it's just a wall of cars that pull up on the other side. So they've got them pinned in at like a traffic light in the middle of the road, in the middle of the night.
An unholy alliance between bad guys.
We've got the vengeful dads in the back. We've got the big wall of cars in the front. Dragon Sound, all the band members admittedly and understandably look very confused because they've just pulled right into this huge ambush.
This
that's
is probably
waiting for
like
them.
100 people.
It's a ton, and they're mad for some reason. So the band, the rival band, has put together quite a little ambush for them, and I guess just found a lot of people who want to join them in doing this. So they're sitting there with their blunt weapons of various kinds. A lot of them are standing upright. They either have hoodless cars or in trucks, because a lot of them, for being in cars, are standing.
Yeah, and they have like Mad Max type weapons, like sawed-off
It
pipes
does have
and
that kind of
baseball
vibe.
bats.
They're ready. They're apparently going to do some horrible things to Dragon Sound. And again, Dragon Sound is kind of not sure what's going on right away here. This plan with the trap ready to be sprung here, the rivals band leader approaches Dragon Sound and says, hey, look, you took my job. My career's ruined. And there's really only one thing you can do. You need to get out of this town.
And keep in mind, he does that, but it's more like, yeah, you took my job, and I'm in charge. The guy just doesn't do anything but yell.
He's got one mode. I hope that's how he sang.
Mark tries to defuse the situation again, explains, just got the job through an agent. It's not personal. Rival band leader says, bullshit. You leave town.
Bullshit. You don't have an agent. Come on.
And you can't even quit playing at this club. You have to leave town.
One of those, like, this town's not big enough
Yeah,
for
he
both
thinks
of us
it's
sort
the
of
Wild
things.
West or something.
So John takes his turn now and says, maybe you could talk to the club owner? I don't know. Maybe think about going about it that way. It's not something that we did. It's just a job.
No, he already beat our ass.
No, I think mob execution is probably better.
Yeah, no luck. No luck reasoning with this vengeful dad guy. It's time for a fight. And I will say there's a lot more of the angry mob than there are of Dragon Sound. So once again, this looks bad for the good side in this fight. When we start the process, it looks like, well, this won't go well. But there's something that Dragon Sound has on their side that the mob doesn't, guys.
What's that?
That is impeccable Taekwondo skills. And heart, yes. They've got lots of that.
Love.
So in a series of fight sequences,
Dragons.
I didn't put any of these down really. We get to see each of the main members kind of do their thing. Mark, YK Kim is of course the main draw in this. He gets a bunch of fancy kicks, and honestly, this is where John kind of had some time to shine, and I was really impressed. He was doing more than anyone else besides
Just don't
YK
look at his
Kim.
face while he does it.
Sure.
He does a lot of the like nostrils flaring, mouth open stuff.
Did you guys notice anything in particular about this fight? Because I kind of started glazing over.
I noticed that it was 45 minutes long.
It took a while. My favorite part, however, was YK Kim is running, and he runs around a corner of a building, and then a pudgy guy's chasing him, and as the pudgy guy comes around, YK Kim sucker punches him in the stomach. It was kind of great.
I did note when we were doing our shared watch of it that a lot of these fight scenes start with the band running away, then beating the shit out of everyone as they chase after them.
Yeah, as people disperse, which is smart. I guess in a
it
way,
makes sense to minimize the advantage they have in numbers. Could be part of the game plan. It just looks funny because their initial reaction is Dragon Sound's going to beat the shit out of these people after they run away.
They give him an
First
opportunity.
run.
They're like, we're going to run. If you chase us, we'll beat your ass. But if you choose to decide, I made a mistake, I'm not going to attack Dragon Sound, you'll get away with your life.
it kind of makes sense with their philosophy. One of their philosophies, another of them is to rock.
And there's an entire turf war essentially going down in downtown Miami. No cops, no one there.
No.
This is just 100 people attacking Dragon Sound.
This particular turf war is about stage time at the club. It's not about the drug trade.
No, we've gone on to that thread now, which is why the biggest plot in this whole thing is not anything to do with the drugs, but rather this mad band that is like, you
And
took our job.
More people are involved with violent weapons about this than they are about the
drugs.
presumably multi-million-dollar drug trade.
So ultimately, like we've alluded to, Dragon Sound beats up every single angry mob member, including the members of the rival band, who, by the way, they're now 0 for 2 in trying to get their careers back on track through violence.
Would this move?
They drew that plan up like, all right, we'll try this. We'll try that.
Oh, this is just not working.
It's not
Third
happening.
time's a charm, guys. Let's go again.
Would this movie have been better if Angelo Gennati had hooked up his amp real quick into a side thing and soloed an enemy away from him?
Oh,
course.
definitely.
Like rocked him to death?
Like in the Breaking the Law music video by
Yeah,
Judas
exactly
Priest,
like
where they
that.
break open the bank vault and break
Yeah.
the guy's glasses through rocking.
You know, now that you mentioned Judas Priest, I should mention that intro song that I was a little lower on than you, it just sounds kind of like worse Judas Priest.
Okay.
Like, but only the verse. It doesn't ever do anything but that chugging part.
Yeah, that's fair. You're wrong.
At the Dragon Sound campus house, right after this huge street fight involving 100 people, the band is no worse for the wear.
They're fine.
Yeah, and indeed, they actually are kind of like, they seem to have mentally just put that whole thing behind them. Most people, you get in a fight like that, you're probably fucked
Sticks
for a
with
while.
you. This actually, I think they leveled up a little bit.
Yeah, they're totally fine. In fact, we see Jim wandering around shirtless, humming the big hit at the time, Falco's Rock Me Amadeus, to himself.
Was he really?
Yeah.
I didn't
And
even notice that.
He announces to the house, hey, I'm getting in the shower first, guys.
And this is the beginning of where the movie gets more homoerotic than it has been up to this point. And it already kind of is, because it's the 80s, you know?
Well, it's just built in.
You know, all these guys are just kind of walking around shirtless together a lot, but now you see their living quarters really for the first time.
Yeah, and most of the scenes on the campus house, they're all crammed in one tiny area, usually not wearing very much clothes.
No.
That's the rest of the way, pretty much, with them.
Well, Jim tends to just unbutton his pants
Yeah,
and leave
that's
it.
his signature look. He doesn't have the shirt, and his pants aren't all the way up.
You see those tidy whities.
Absolutely. Before he actually gets a chance to get in the shower, though, John from the living room alerts him, hey, You got a letter all the way from Washington, D.C.
The first time you see this movie, there is zero chance you could guess what the letter would be.
Yep. This is one of those swings and I'll say it. It's a swing and a miss at a chance to add some extra wrinkles into this movie.
But again, I'll tell you, it is such a curveball.
Oh, yeah.
That you have to admire it.
So John wants to know what's going on with the letter. He's really annoying about it. He does the thing, like the childish thing where he holds it in front of Jim's face and then won't let him have it.
And because he is 8'3", he can do that.
This infuriated me. I hate that shit.
You know who else infuriates is Jim,
Yes.
who legitimately seems to be getting mad. Like, I believed that scene because he has that whiny voice and it really starts rising like 3 octaves because he can't get the letter. And okay, when you think about it from Jim's perspective, it's annoying anyway, but also he kind of knows what this might be.
This is a big deal to him.
And John's like,
No, we
tell me
don't
what's
know
going.
that.
No, we have no
And
idea.
neither does Dragon Sound. They don't know that Jim's awaiting
Jim's been
big
harboring
news.
a bit of a secret. So he loses his shit, starts screaming, drawing the other 3 band members into the room. Tommy uses his little quip twice about, were you trying to wake the neighbors? And Mark says, what's going on?
Look, Tommy is more comfortable on stage.
This was definitely a case of, like, for example, someone saying something, no one reacting and going, "Oh, that was a good joke.
They
I
must have
need
not
people to
heard it."
react. I better say it again louder."
Yeah, I've done that on this podcast before.
Oh, we all have. Oh, yeah.
It's a really awkward thing where the rest of them have to be in this scene too. And
It was
they all,
a dick joke, Spencer.
Oh
Dick
yeah.
Park.
I went ahead and went right through that one.
All the little dicks running around, their balls moving to and fro like feet, while the penis is erect, walking around, saying hi to the other little dicks at the dick park.
I will say we're close to wrapping this episode up, and I can't think of a way I'd rather do it than what we just got into there. Jim is about to reveal to us. This is such a huge moment. I'd say it's the most emotional moment in the entire movie, which is why I wanted to end our first episode on this note, because it's going to be too much for the people listening. They're going to need a little bit to decompress.
On top of the reveal of the secret in its fact, you also get the reveal of what Jim's voice sounds like to the listener who's unacquainted.
Maurice Smith, our actor here, does his very best with this material. I went ahead and left a full minute in of his explanation
And
of
he's
what
the
this...
happiest character in the movie.
Here, he's going through a little something, but normally, absolutely. Cheerful guy. We talked about him as the emotional center of the band, and here we get a chance for him to share his emotions with us in a full minute monologue.
My mother was Korean, and my father was Black American. She gave me this picture when she was real sick. I was only 9 years old. They say that they loved each other and they were real loyal. They were real happy. But then when he finished military duty, he left. And we never saw him again. She told me to find him. But I didn't like him because he left us. But I knew one day when I grew up, I'd find him. Whether he was dead or alive. I sent a couple letters to the defense department. Nothing happened.
All the while, by the way, Mark is steadily creeping toward Jim to comfort him. No one else really knows how to handle that. So that is quite a moment for us all, I think. I'm not especially clear by just the monologue what he's even describing. I know what's happening because I've seen the movie, but he never really says to anyone like what really is going on.
He doesn't say what the contents of the letter either.
Nope. So we just kind of guess. He does follow this letter reading up with taking a picture out of his wallet of a man who turns out to be his dad. YK Kim's character's line is that your brother? I didn't know you had a brother. And then no, that's my dad. And he has just a fantastic line we all loved when we watched it, which is, I didn't know that you had a dad. I thought we were all orphans.
And the way he says it is, it's almost like he's accusing him, as if he's going to be like, "You're not a part of the band
Get out
anymore.
of
You're
the
not an
house.
orphan.
Fraud.
You have to be an orphan to be here, you piece of
Honestly,
shit.
you're the weakest musician of the group anyway.
You're the one who plays drums, although we never really see you playing the drums. We'll
I
see
think
the
he's
hands.
the keyboard player.
Jim is the keyboard.
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
it's
Oh, it's the Israeli guy that does the drums.
Jack.
Yeah.
Jack is the drummer. Yeah,
Point
you're
still
right
stands.
though. Still, Anyway, you can see this is a lot. This is actually going to derail the rest of the movie. It's just going to become about Jim and his search for his father from this point on. There's no more fighting or anything.
Yeah, and again, it's not especially clear the first time you see it, like that they were even all orphans.
No, that never really played into it.
Because usually in movies, you don't really know about a person's parents unless that's like a plot point.
Unless that's relevant.
Yeah.
They shoehorned a couple things in here to add more wrinkles to the story and to the characters. It was a lot, and it came out very awkwardly. Good job. Good job, Miami Connection.
How do you think they found each other? Like you moved to America in the case of at least
That's a
YK
great
Kim,
question.
maybe a few of the others. One's from Ireland, I
Probably
guess.
one of those websites designed for like if you're looking to meet
Orphanfinder.biz.
musicians slash Taekwondo aficionados.
/ orphans.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
/ orphans / bikers. I don't know.
It seems like a lot more. That was just the first 30 minutes of Miami Connection. We have a full hour left that we can cover next week. I wanted to leave it there because that's too much. We can't handle that. We need time to recover. And then we'll get into the climactic finish of this obviously masterpiece of a movie. How do you guys feel the first 30 minutes into it?
I remember the first time I saw it thinking, this is a very lighthearted, goofy 80s movie, and I love it. I would continue to love it, but again, I would not have thought at this juncture that anyone would die.
Well, if you take any creative writing course or a screenwriting course or any of that, you learn, of course, about the 3 phases of a plot. You've got coming up, you've got the big event, you've got the come down, you got all this stuff. Movies that don't do that can either be atrocious or they can be hilarious because they're so weird, and that's where this movie falls.
Or they can be great if you're someone who knows how to work outside
Sure.
of structure, but
Yeah.
I don't think YK Kim does.
That's not the case here, but I'm psyched. I think we've built up this story. We have a bunch of orphans who sing, and one of them might not be an orphan, but they're ninjas, so sure, let's go with it.
By this point in the movie, I just know when we were watching it for the first time, we were already hooked.
Oh, yeah.
This scene probably took it to another level for us when we were watching it for the first time. I remember laughing hysterically when he read that letter. And when they had the reveal of, like, I thought we were all orphans.
The
we were
gym
just dying
scenes
at
are
that.
as good as anything gets. And he only has 3 really prominent ones, probably.
He's really not, for the most part, that important of a character, but he starts becoming it the rest of the way. Anyway, it's going to be nuts talking about the last hour of it. Before we get out of here, there are a couple things that we would like you to know. You should give us a review. We haven't had a new review in a while. It'll be kind of nice. So go to your Apple, your iTunes, iPod thing, whatever you do, whatever you're using. Go to that app where you rate stuff and give us the 5 stars and tell us how much you like us and how much you like Miami Connection.
And we'll get a tattoo of Dragon Sound.
I'm waiting for us to not go with that one, but as long as it keeps coming up, I'll ride that thing out. You can find us in other places. We are also on YouTube. Van has been uploading our back catalog onto YouTube for quite some time. We have a website, bootuinc.com. It's boot with a UINC.com. I'd also like to mention patreon.com/bootuinc. We've got a lot of bonus stuff up there. It's a staggering amount by this point. I'm actually really impressed with our bonus catalog. It is freely available. You can donate if you like what we do.
Most recently, we had an episode talking about naming an inflatable pickle.
That's right.
Groucho, and I'm looking at him right now. I love Groucho.
Giving you a stink eye with his 1 or 2 noses. We don't know.
We're on Blue Sky. Van is Bootu Inc. at Blue Sky. Brian is Loud Guitar Brian. I am Golden Hat Mick for reasons I don't even know. We also have a Discord channel too.
You go to the website, bootuinc.com. There's a button. It says Discord. You click on it, you join, you chat with us.
Yeah, that's how that works, and we'll be ready for you. We are all over the place is what I'm trying to get at here, and there's no reason you shouldn't go out there and experience that. That's all we've got for this week. I think I am prepared for us to go do something against the ninja.